Recently, I had the opportunity to do some consulting for some other coaching programs, and I sat in on a couple of sessions where the practitioner was making recommendations for this person whose blood work was sort of out of whack in a sense. And by no means am I saying I'm a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but I do know from the research what affects different numbers in different ways. And these are the lifestyle numbers that we're looking at. I'm not talking about something that has to do with an illness or chronic condition. I'm talking about a generally healthy person that might have some numbers out of whack. And maybe they're heading towards something of a chronic illness, right? Heart disease, diabetes, whatever it might be. And I was listening to the practitioner sort of make these recommendations. Oat milk is not as good as almond milk, which is still okay in terms of the whole milk, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking to myself, and I'm like, I'm looking at this person, I'm looking at their numbers, and I'm hearing some of the things that they had said. Perhaps that they don't really exercise much, maybe 2 times a week. They're not sleeping well, and you're eating 5 or 6 times a day, pretty heavy meals. And I'm thinking to myself, it's not the milk. And it might be the case after they do the test, and they did a genetic, sensitivity test, and I'm not going to get into the weeds with that one. But the point is that we are missing the forest for this tree here. The problem with this individual was not the fact that they had too much oat milk. It wasn't that they're having too much dairy or etc. This individual just needed to move more because they had a pretty sedentary job and they're eating a whole lot of calories, and they weren't sleeping, and they just weren't doing anything to help work with all that, right? So for this person, if they just got a little bit more active on a daily basis, the 10,000 steps I've talked about, that would nudge them in the right direction and improve some of their blood numbers. If they start to exercise, 3 times a week for 50 minutes, that would nudge them in a little bit more. If they slept a little bit better, that would nudge them. All these things in their lifestyle would nudge them a little bit more. And more than oat milk versus almond milk versus dairy milk, the person had to be in a calorie deficit. They were not in a calorie deficit because they were gaining weight. And a lot of these markers are out of whack because of the inflammation and the things that happen as a result of gaining weight. And I'm not here to blame anything at this point, but if some of these numbers are out of whack, like triglycerides are flowing around the blood, it's because you've taken in more energy that you need to use. Because if you use that energy, it wouldn't be floating around in your blood. Same with the blood sugar, right? So that's to oversimplify it in a way. But the point is this: it's not these little details that are an issue. It's not the milk selection. It's the fact that this person wasn't exercising. It was the fact that this person wasn't sleeping well. It was the fact that this person was probably eating more energy than they needed. So this is why when you compare me to some of the other coaches, compare our approach to some of the other programs, we're trying to simplify it. Let's get to the root of why you are where you are right now. It's probably not the details. We might worry about the details down the road, but the major thing to make a change right now is not changing the milk that you're drinking. That's a small detail, and it might have a small effect. You might be lactose intolerant, it might influence you in that way. But the whole point is this: there are a lot of things before that. They're putting the cart before the horse. I'm worried about the horse. What's driving this change and where it's at? And let's focus on the big rocks, make adjustments there, and maybe or maybe not, we have to worry about the details in terms of what milk you should be drinking. But for the most part, it's not that. It's not these little details that are the issue.